Order. Question number 8, Chris Hipkins.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. To the Minister of Education. Does she believe that partnership schools should report NCEA results using the same methodology as state schools? If so, why hasn't that been the case so far?
The Honourable Hipkins.
Tēnā koe, Mr Speaker. Kia ora. Mr Speaker, it's not a question of belief, it is a question of fact. The member opposite is incorrect in stating that state schools are required to report their NCEA results. They are not. Partnership schools have a higher accountability framework in exchange for a higher level of flexibility and are therefore required to report their results. As there was no reporting regime for schools when the partnership school model was developed, the Ministry provided an initial accountability model to take into account the point-of-time reporting regime required. As per the Education Report released under the Official Information Act, and that the member has a copy of, the calculation has been reviewed and round 3 contracts that were recently signed calculate the performance measure for partnership schools on the same basis as provided on the Education Count's website.
Supplementary question.
Supplementary question, Chris Hipkins.
Why did she award performance bonuses to partnership schools last year on the basis that they'd achieved their performance targets, given the Ministry of Education have now advised her that had their performance been measured using the Education Counts methodology, which every other state school in the country is measured based on, at least 2 of them wouldn't have met the criteria to get their performance bonus?
The Honourable Hipkins.
Mr Speaker, they aren't performance bonuses. They are an amount held back. They were awarded on the basis that Vanguard Military School, Level 1, achieved 91.4%, Level 2, 60%. Te Kuruhaurua or Whangarei Terenga Parawa, 77.8% and 55.6%. Whangaruru did not meet its performance standards and has been closed. Mr Speaker, partnership schools are characterised not only by their flexibility, but a requirement in the contract that 75% of their role should be the kids who are least served by the existing education system. They're also characterised, as all other schools are, by choice. No parent is forced to send their child to a partnership school, but they do so because they fear that their children have not been successful in the other options, and their children are doing better on average. There is more work to do. But, Mr Speaker, if we looked at state schools as well, we would also find failure there. We don't give up on any child.
Supplementary question.
Supplementary question, Chris Hipkins.
Why does she have confidence in the integrity of the information being supplied by partnership schools in their performance reporting, given that one school that reported that 93.3% of their leavers had achieved NCEA Level 2 found that their results dropped to just 6.7% when they were assessed using the same methodology on the Education Accounts website that state school performance is measured on?
Mr Speaker,
the Honourable Hipkins.
I want to answer that question in 2 parts. So the particular school that the member is referring to failed. We have closed it. But in terms of the first part, I have no indication that the sponsors are deliberately misreporting their results. And secondly, we have a unit in the Ministry of Education dedicated to working to them. And the member next door to the member asking the question should know that Pacifica kids actually are getting a good deal with these options. Really, ask the parents who've chosen to send them there rather than the opposition deciding where they should be sent.
Supplementary question, Mr Speaker.
Supplementary question, Chris Hipkins.
Well, why does she have confidence in the performance information being supplied by partnership schools when one of the partnership schools that reported a 100% NCEA pass rate at Level 2 and thereby exceeded their performance target in their contract was reassessed to only have a 60% pass rate at NCEA Level 2 and therefore had not met their performance contract.
Mr Speaker,
The Honourable.
the reason that the member can ask these questions is because the utmost transparency with which we run all schools in New Zealand, and every 3 months we release this data. And if the member looked closely at the table on page 6, he will see reported results, exactly right, and there's a further column that has those recalibrated against Education Count's website. So I can assure the member we have a Ministry of Education working with sponsors to ensure that they are indeed reliable data and they are comparable.
Supplementary question, Mr Speaker.
Supplementary question, Chris Hipkins.
Why should the public have confidence that partnership schools' performance is being rated on the same basis as state school performance when the criteria that she used to award their performance bonuses last year was different to the criteria that state schools are measured by, and schools that had been deemed to have met their performance criteria didn't meet their performance criteria when assessed on the same basis as every other school?
The Honourable Heke Parata.
First of all, it's different from. But anyway, to go to the substance of the question, Mr Speaker, this is a model evolving in the same way as other models. Kura kaupapa, for instance, the development of ngā whanaketanga e pāna ki ngā take mātauranga. We're developing performance data with them as well to better capture it. I have confidence, the public should have confidence, because we report very clearly what's happening. We account for every dollar, and actually partnership schools have a much higher accountability framework. They are contracted, they're required to report quarterly. And we provide that information for the opposition because it's the only issue they seem to have questions on in education.